I don't get to, like I would have seen 4 or 5 times a year,
Hmm.
and cup finals and that sort of stuff. And I think I'm as much looking forward to that, getting some tunes on, getting some select DVDs on and around all the screens in the pub and all that sort of thing. I'm probably looking forward to as much as that as I'm the actual
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
And we'll obviously talk about predictions and stuff like that for the game as well, and whether what we think the actual outcome will be. But I do kind of miss that side of it, and it's because we don't get a chance like back home where you're kind of socialising and mixing with Celtic fans. You can talk about the games after it and stuff. When the games
Yeah.
finish here, it's like 4 in the morning. I'm not going to phone up a mate at 4 in the morning and talk about a game. I'm going straight to my bed. Before my kids wake me up at 6 in the morning. So, but you know what I mean. So you
Uh,
kind of miss that sort of side of it is. I mean, it's a welcome sort of return on Sunday, but if it's a case of what would I like to happen, I think my gut feel is I like him to stay there, but just be suffering for forever eternal, and just so you can just get those 4 or 5 games a year where you can meet all your mates
get it right up. He's
and
one of those
smash them.
ones.
Yeah,
Just a get it right up. He's one.
yeah. I mean, that's when I sort of started going to the games, as you said, all those years ago. It was
Mm.
there were still the big games and whatever, but
Yeah,
the real challenge wasn't from them. It was from Aberdeen, who were really strong at the
yeah,
time under
absolutely was.
Ferguson, and
Yeah,
Dundee United through Jim McLean. And
yeah,
I
that's.
reckon I could name half of the flipping Dundee United team because they were that good, and
Mhm,
they were just a real class team. From
mhm.
I mean, the goalkeeper was out flaky with Hamish McAlpine, but
Good old
all the way.
Hamish.
Oh,
He
I
wore
didn't
the
like him.
hoops. He wore the hoops after that, didn't he? He played for us for a few games.
Ah, that rings a bell actually.
He
So did
definitely
Alan
did.
Ruff. Remember those days?
He did. Yes, I remember
He
that.
was actually all right for us, Alan Ruff. He was probably half a season or something played for us. But
He
yeah,
did
like
all
so it
right.
was in that regard. No, I don't miss the whole. Like if I was back home, I don't think I'd miss. I think there's been a whole sort of taming down of, from what I can sort of read and hear anyway, was what it was compared to what it was like. I think there's a lot more acceptance of the
Mm.
fact that we're just better than them, and
Yep.
there's more of an acknowledgement of the fact that we're a good team on our day. We're a good team, whereas when Rangers were around in the Premier League at the time, there was this whole
Yep.
thing about it was always this almost like a comparison, if you know what I mean. It was like
Yeah.
and like they don't want to say anything good about Celtic because that would reflect on Rangers, and they don't want people thinking you're a Celtic fan, just because you're bumping up Celtic and saying how good they are. Which again is my whole take of it. I know there's a whole sort of thing about the old firm, and people don't use the term old firm.
Yep.
I know I'm in the minority. It doesn't bother me as much because for me, saying the word old firm, especially if you're in the media, if you're on TV, on the radio and stuff like that, it's just a way of not saying Rangers or Celtic and Rangers in order. Because
Mm.
I know as a kid and growing up, even probably my teens and early 20s, if somebody said Rangers and Celtic, I
You knew what
instantly
they were.
thought, I
Yeah.
instantly tagged them as a Rangers supporter. Whereas if you
Yep.
say if you say Old Firm, it takes that side of it away. So that's kind of my very simplistic thought. And I know I'm very much
But
minority, but
but
that's just
you're a Celtic fan, so when you speak, all you need to say is Celtic and Sevco.
well I do now. Yeah, the new firm. That's right. But the new firm. But anyway, that's just my take on it. So
No, that's all good.
Old Firm doesn't bother me quite so much as it bothers other people. But
I just don't like using it either because it died. It died along with them in 2012, as far as I'm concerned. See, before we do move on, though, Lee, because Liam, I'd like to get your view on that.
Yeah.
The Sunday Herald ad,
Yeah.
because I know it was Pat spoke about it a fair bit there. But
Mm.
what was your take on the purpose of that ad? Was it a good idea to do it, or was it pointless, or what's your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, again, thinking of it from a journalistic point of view,
Mhm.
expressing the truth is never a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's never a bad thing to tell the truth. Now, I can see where Pat's coming from, the extent of he's bored with all this stuff, and we know that they died, so what does it really matter, right?
Yeah.
Now, I look at it slightly differently.
Mhm.
Now, you boys know that my family used to have the contract to supply staff at Ibrox,
Yeah.
and we lost that contract shortly before the Huns went into administration.
Mhm.
Now, so my family had all, I mean, I'm not going to go through it, but they had all kinds of financial turmoil and lost the house, etc., after the business went under.
Yeah.
And in at least part, Rangers were responsible for that. As indeed they shafted a hell of a lot of other people as well. And not just the creditors, there was also the people who had come to expect ongoing business from Ibrox and were suddenly not getting paid anymore. Not everybody who was owed money by the former club was actually listed on the list of creditors, because a lot of stuff was done off the books, shall we say.
Okay.
And a lot of people went through a lot of hurt because of that club and because of the way it behaved and because of its arrogance and its intransigence. And quite frankly, I am glad that they died. And I think they should never, ever be allowed to forget it, because the suffering that they caused by doing that is still being felt today by thousands of people all across Scotland. And again, I'm personally involved in this, and maybe I should take a bit of professional distance, but when it comes to them, I can't. It infuriates me, this whole complete fallacy that they're allowed to pretend that they still are the same club and that nothing happened. Try telling that to the people who are bankrupt now because of them. Try telling that to people who've lost their houses. Try telling that to people who are still chasing up debts that are never going to be repaid while they carry on with their 55 titles and counting, we are the people. Fuck that. Right? Really, they're a shower of shite, and they really should not be allowed to ever get away with that crap. And I know I'm starting to sound very bitter when I say that, but to be honest, it's not just Rangers, it's just the corporate world in general really pisses me off. And this is just one symptom of it. This idea that a big company can screw over a load of little people and nothing is done about it because they are Rangers.
Because of who they are, basically.
Aye, basically.
The institutional club.
Yeah.
But you're right, Liam, because so many were impacted by what happened badly, but that's an untold story in many ways.
That's not going to sell any copies of the Daily Record, is it? They just want to hear the latest lies about some billionaire who's going to bail out the Huns. They don't want to hear about the shopkeeper who's lost his shop. They don't want to hear about the people who got death threats because they asked for the bills to be paid. They don't want to hear that. They just want to hear that Rangers are coming back and that they never went away.
That's right.
Good
on you, Liam.
Saying about the article, I would have written it differently if I'd have been writing it. Because I think, whilst what it said was true and accurate, and the fact that nobody has taken any form of legal action against the Sunday Herald for running it, basically in my books validates it. Because the Huns, they would sue anybody if they could get away with it, right?
They probably didn't actually understand it though, Liam.
No, but I mean,
they got to the second paragraph that they've been too long for a few of them.
Aye, true. I mean, a lot of them can't even read, but let's not go there.
It's the schools, Liam. It's the schools.
But my point is that article should have been a lot shorter, a lot more direct, and a lot more to the point.
I would agree with that.
Shorter,
I
definitely.
would just add 4 or 5 bullet points, quotes from people of importance. I'd have had the Donald Finlay quote. I would have had the Walter Smith quote. I would have had some of the quotes from the Daily Record and the Sun at the time that the Huns died.
Yes, that's right.
What has changed since then? Nothing.
Well, that's a very good point actually, because that seems to be getting lost as well. That these are the very same papers that at the time had said, they were dead and buried basically, but yet they've turned round full circle and they're just regurgitating this pish now again, and that's, as you said earlier on, they're towing the party line.
Aye, but it's under the mistaken notion that somehow, kowtowing to the Huns is going to save their readership. I mean, the Huns that can read, a lot of them don't even buy the Record anymore anyway.
Yeah, because they're a pro-Celtic paper, of course, in their eyes.
And this is the other unhealthy thing about it, which I think is ultimately is going to lead to trouble on Sunday, right? Is that before liquidation, right, the Huns had this master race mentality. They had a supremacy about them. And they thought, they say it themselves, we are the people, right? They think that they're God's chosen people, right? And however misguided that may be, that was what they lived by up until liquidation. Now, since they died, and were reincarnated or whatever you want to call it, since they came back, that has been replaced with an acute victim complex. And you think of how aggressive and how nasty some of those people were when they were winning.
Yes.
What are they going to be like now that they're on the receiving end?
Yep.
It's not going to be pretty, and it's going to be very, very ugly. And papers, see, to be right, I'm going to say something right now, controversial, but this is true, right?
Mm-hmm.
God forbid, if anybody gets murdered on Sunday after the game, the Daily Record have got blood on their hands because they have been milking this and stirring up shit all week, and it's an absolute disgrace.
They always have done it, but it's been ramping up. I mean, for God's sake, see some of the names that have been getting, former players that have been getting dredged out. We've had we had Wayne Biggins, for crying out loud. They managed to dig him out and get some quotes from Wayne Biggins. But there's been some other, like, ex-Huns have been getting dragged out to get their views on it and all the rest of it as well. And they really have been ramping this stuff up.
I mean, I've never worked for the Record, but I know people who have, and I've had dealings with Record journalists before, and the way they approach a story is completely different from how a journalist should report a story. Now, I'm going to get a wee bit technical here, but bear with me. We were always taught, as journalists, we were always taught when I was at college, then when I was at university, I was always taught by my lecturers, who were all professional journalists, international journalists. They all said, right, what you have to do, you get an idea for a story, and then you interview people involved in it, and you do your research. And if the research and the interviews tally up, then you've got a story. If they don't, you haven't got a story. Right? You ditch it and you go after something else. Journalism's a gamble, right? You know, maybe only half the stories that you actually start working on will turn out to be decent stories because you're going to hit a brick wall sometimes, right?
Yep.
Instead, what the Records seem to do now, not just with football, but most of their stories, they have a pre-planned agenda of how they want a story to pan out, and then they go out and find gullible people who will actually back up what they want to say. I mean, this week their obvious agenda was, right, find Celtic people who are willing to say it's still Rangers and go and track them. And you notice that when Tom Boyd, God bless him, Tom Boyd finally came out and actually spoke the truth.
Yes.
It wasn't to the Record. It was to an Irish newspaper, and the Record stole it and passed it off as their own story. Right? Again, that's another thing which they've been doing all too frequently recently, is just lifting quotes from other newspapers without any accreditation, without saying this is from here. They try and pass it off as their own work, and it quite blatantly isn't. I mean, I had a real go at the Record the other day, actually, on their Facebook page. I don't know if you read it, but they named the poor driver who was driving that truck that crashed in George Square.
All right.
Now, what possible journalistic purpose could it serve to name the driver of that lorry, right? Because that poor man's got to live with having killed 6 people for the rest of his life.
Yes.
You know, and until we know that it wasn't an accident, and I think chances are it was an accident. I don't think anybody would intentionally do that. You know, it was an accident, and the general consensus is it was an accident. What possible benefits have to the public to name the guy? None whatsoever. It was blatant shit stirring to try and sell newspapers.
Actually, on that kind of similar vein, Liam, I was just flicking through. I was looking on TweetDeck. Someone just tweeted something there, and some kind of caught my eye. It was actually an article that the Daily Record have just released. I've just posted up, and I'll quote the headline. Right. Old firm wife beaters set to receive visit from police in bid to stamp out violence sparked by Glasgow Derby.
For fuck's sake.
See,
can you repeat that? Can you repeat that part?
Old firm wife beaters set to receive visit from police in bid to stamp out violence sparked by Glasgow Derby. Extra officers have been drafted in to target known offenders during Sunday's Old Firm match and the other semi between Aberdeen and Dundee United tomorrow. Known domestic abuse offenders will get a knock on the door from police in a bid to stop violence sparked by Sunday's Old Firm clash. Blah, blah. Seriously, I've got no idea why I clicked on it, but you were talking about the Record at the time.
That is, in one sentence, everything that is wrong with the Scottish media, right? You've got Old Firm tarring everybody with the same brush.
Yeah.
You've got sensationalism, domestic violence, fear, paranoia, right? you've got a blatant assumption that can't be corroborated.